At the dusty Blackwood Falls station, lost in the endless expanses of 1883 Wyoming, where the wind's whistle was more familiar than a bell's chime, a drama was unfolding that the town's residents had been discussing for a week. The train, slowly crawling to the platform, was not just a means of transport, but a harbinger of fate, arriving from distant Chicago. Its car exuded the acrid smoke of coal soot, mixed with the scent of anxiety emanating from its main passenger. The young woman descending the steps seemed like an ethereal creature in this harsh landscape. Her name was Rosalind Ashton, and she was 23 years old. Her dress, while simple, was clearly made from expensive dark blue fabric and was neatly ironed. The white collar and cuffs favorably highlighted her slender neck and graceful wrists. Her honey-colored hair was neatly gathered in a tight bun, but several unruly strands escaped, framing a face frozen in an expression of both fragility and stubbornness. Her deep green eyes revealed worry, but beneath it, an unyielding will could be read. She clutched a small leather handbag so tightly that her knuckles turned white. It seemed she had not come in search of a husband, but for a duel, where her only weapon was her pride. Rosalind was a mail-order bride for the local Judge Horace Pendleton, a man with a reputation as dry and cold as the winter prairie wind. He was in his 50s, his gray hair neatly combed back, and his buttoned-up frock coat emphasized his impenetrability. He waited for her on the platform, surrounded by a group of curious townspeople who couldn't wait for the show. Horace did not smile, he merely gave a slight nod in greeting, his gaze as detached as his speech. He saw in her only a practical solution to his problems, a tool for continuing his lineage and managing his household. He didn't need love, but order, and Rosalind, it seemed to him, was the perfect fit for this role. But before she could take her first step on this foreign land, another man blocked her path. This was Caleb O'Connell, owner of the largest ranch in the county, a man whose name in Blackwood Falls was spoken with respect and a slight fear. He was about 35. His build was solid, and his face, tan and wine-chapped, revealed years spent under the scorching sun. His eyes, the color of molten gold, gazed piercingly at Rosalind, and in them there was not a hint of curiosity, only cold, calculated resolve. He wore a worn leather jacket over a time-darkened shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat only partially concealed his harsh features. Caleb was not a local hero or villain, he was a force of nature, a man accustomed to taking what he needed without asking for permission. He stepped forward, intercepting her gaze, and the whole town froze in anticipation. "Miss Ashton, I presume," Caleb said, his voice low and commanding, like a wild beast's growl. He put emphasis on her name, as if claiming it. Rosalind flinched, but quickly regained her composure. "Yes, and you, I presume, are Judge Pendleton," Caleb scoffed, and the sound was laced with mockery. "No, I'm Caleb O'Connell, and I've come for you." Judge Pendleton, who had been watching the events with an impassive expression until now, finally spoke up. "Mr. O'Connell, this is unacceptable. Miss Ashton is my fiancée. According to our agreement, your agreement." Caleb turned sharply to the judge, his gaze like an icy storm. "You couldn't marry her, Judge. You just used her as a tool for your own gain." Caleb stepped closer to Rosalind, his voice a little softer, but no less threatening. "Miss Ashton, I know your brother is in big trouble. I can help him, but only if you agree to marry me." Rosalind felt the blood drain from her face. Her brother, Robert, he was her only family, her only link to the past. In the letters she had received, he wrote that he had accumulated debts by getting involved with dishonest people, and now he was facing prison, if not worse. She had agreed to this marriage of convenience with the judge only for his sake, hoping that Pendleton's money would help Robert get out of trouble. And now, this man, Caleb O'Connell, stood before her, offering another deal, a darker, more dangerous one. Caleb's eyes gleamed as he caught her confusion. He saw her vulnerability and used it mercilessly. "I know your brother Robert owes a large sum to the Black Crowes gang. He owes them not just money, but his life. He is being held hostage in Death Valley, and I'm the only one who can get him out of there. But for that, you must call off this marriage and marry me. Otherwise, your brother, he won't live to see the dawn." The townspeople whispered. Judge Pendleton turned pale, but did not say a word, only his lips trembled. He was an influential man, but even he did not want to get involved with the Black Crowes gang, whose cruelty was legendary. A ringing silence hung in the air, broken only by the whistling of the wind. Rosalind felt her entire world crumbling beneath her feet. Her brother, her salvation, Her only hope, everything depended on her choice. This man, Caleb O'Connell, seemed to her like the devil incarnate, but he was her only hope. She imagined Robert, his frightened face, his desperate eyes. She couldn't abandon him. She couldn't lose him. "I agree," she said, her voice hoarse but firm. She lifted her head, meeting Caleb's piercing gaze. In her green eyes, a fire ignited, portending not submission, but something far more powerful. It was hatred, pure and ruthless. Judge Pendleton let out a faint cry, but Caleb paid him no mind. He only gave a slight nod, his gaze gliding over her face, assessing her resolve. He saw that she was broken, but not broken in spirit. He liked that. In his world, only the strong survived, and he saw a hidden strength in her. Caleb turned and headed towards his horse, beckoning for Rosalind to follow him. She, as if in a daze, followed him. The townspeople parted, their faces filled with curiosity and horror. They didn't know what had happened, but they felt they had witnessed something sinister. Judge Pendleton was left standing on the platform, his face ashen. He had lost not only a fiancée, but his dignity as well. Rosalind got into the saddle, feeling the rough leather under her hands. Caleb handed her the reins. She looked at him, and her eyes held a silent question mixed with a threat. "If you lied to me," he merely smirked, and there was no warmth in that smirk. "I never lie, Miss Ashton. It's too expensive." They rode down the dusty road, leaving Blackwood Falls and its residents behind. Rosalind felt her heart tighten with pain and anger. She hated this man, but knew her life now belonged to him. Or, at least, that's what she thought. A flame ignited in her chest, and it was a flame of vengeance. She wouldn't just be a pawn in his game. She would find a way to escape his trap and take back her life. Her hatred was so strong that it drowned out her fear. She was ready to fight. The dusty road led west, toward the O'Connell Ranch, which, as it turned out, was a 2-day ride from town. It was a place whispered about with reverence and fear. Rumor had it that Caleb wasn't just a rancher, but the former leader of the Black Crowes gang, and his lands were beyond the reach of the law. Rosalind, sitting in the saddle, tried to sit up straight, despite her insides coaling with fear. At every hoofbeat, she flinched, expecting to see the bandits who, as Caleb had said, were pursuing her brother. She hated Caleb for dragging her into this game, yet at the same time, she realized he was her only hope. They rode in silence. This silence was heavier than any conversation. Caleb rode ahead, his silhouette blending with the landscape, and behind him, like a ghostly shadow, followed Rosalind. She tried to understand who he was. Was he really a former outlaw? Or did he just use his bad reputation for his own purposes? He was a mystery. Her hatred for him was so strong that she could see nothing but his cruelty. But at one point, when they stopped to rest, she noticed how he carefully adjusted his horse's saddle. And there was something in that gesture that caused her a moment of confusion. He was cruel and rough, but his movements were honed and precise. That night, when Caleb lit a small fire, she finally dared to break the silence. "How did you know about my brother?" she asked, her voice low and hoarse from fatigue. He didn't answer right away, staring contemplatively into the fire. "I know everything that happens in this county, Miss Ashton. I have my own people. Your brother has big debts, and he won't pay them back. The bandits have cut off his path of retreat." "Who are the Black Crowes?" Rosalind asked, her voice ringing with coldness. "My father's former partners. They believe I stole something very valuable from them. Now they want revenge." Rosalind looked at him in horror. "So, you weren't?" She trailed off. Caleb scoffed, tossing a dry branch into the fire. "My father was their leader, but I turned away from that path when he died. Now I'm a rancher, and I have my own problems." "You're lying," Rosalind cried out. "You're just toying with me." Caleb turned sharply to her. "Why would I tow with you? I can just leave you in the desert. I don't need you. I need your brother. If I don't get him out, they'll find me. They know he's in my town. I'm here to save both of you." Her heart tightened with pain and confusion. He wasn't just saving her. He was using her in his own game. She was a pawn, a tool. The next morning, as they rode through a canyon, they heard gunshots. Caleb instantly dismounted, his hand resting on his holster. "Stay here. Don't move," he said. Rosalind nodded, her heart pounding like a drum. She got off her horse and hid behind a rock. A moment later, she heard shouts, then more gunshots. Then silence fell. She waited, not daring to move. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't obey. She thought of her brother, of the possibility that he was dead. Her fear slowly transitioned into rage. Rage at the bandits, rage at the judge, rage at Caleb, who had dragged her into this nightmare. When Caleb returned, his jacket was stained with blood, and his face was grim and cruel. He walked over to her, his gaze cold. They got to him. Your brother is wounded, but I took him. He's over there, beyond the canyon. I couldn't carry him. He's very heavy. Her eyes widened in horror. No, she breathed out. Yes, he's alive, for now. But they wounded him, and they know I'm here. We must hurry. She followed him in silence. Her hatred for him was so strong that she couldn't utter a single word. He saved her, but at what cost? He had exposed her to danger, made her a part of his world. She felt her anger growing into a fierce determination. She would not let him or anyone else use her. She would save her brother, and she would prove to him that she was not just some mail-order bride, but a woman not to be trifled with. They found the wounded Robert in a small cave, sheltered from the wind. He was pale, and the wound on his side was bleeding. He looked exhausted and terrifying. Rosalind, Keith whispered. Why are you here? I came for you, she replied. I won't abandon you. Caleb examined the wound. It needs to be stitched. Otherwise, he won't make it to morning. Rosalind flinched. She had never done anything like this, but she had no choice. She took the needle and thread Caleb gave her and, with trembling hands, began to stitch the wound. She felt tears streaming down her face. She hated this man who had forced her to go through all this, but at the same time, she was grateful to him for saving her brother. This duality of emotions was so strong that she could barely breathe. In her hands was her brother's life, and she would not let it end. Hold him, Rosalind. Don't let him move, Caleb said, his voice firm. She obeyed. She held her brother while Caleb, working quickly and precisely, stitched the wound. She saw his hands, they were calloused, but moved with incredible dexterity. She realized he wasn't just a cruel man. He was a man who survived in this cruel world, and it gave her a strange feeling that she couldn't understand. When everything was done, she sank to the ground, her hands trembling. Robert finally fell asleep, his breathing weak but steady. She looked at Caleb, and in her eyes there was no hatred, only an exhausted expression. Thank you, she whispered. He didn't answer. He just looked at her, his golden eyes like embers in the darkness. She felt that he saw right through her. He saw her vulnerability, her pain. And he knew she was no longer that fragile girl from Chicago. She had become stronger, and she understood that this strength was her only salvation. She knew that now that she had been through this, she would not be the same. Now she was ready to fight for her life, for her brother, for her freedom. On the third day of their journey, when Rosalind's brother, Robert, was still weak, their short trip came to an end. Ahead, against a huge red sky, the O'Connell Ranch was outlined. Not just a house, but an entire settlement protected by high walls of gnarled pine logs. It looked like a fort that had grown out of the wild land. In the middle of the yard stood a large, two-story house, built of massive, dark logs, and around it were clustered stables, barns, and several small houses. Everything here spoke of strength and order, but at the same time, it held something frightening and unwelcoming. The people who worked there were grim, their wine-chapped and silent faces reflecting the harsh nature of this place. As they rode onto the property, Rosalind noticed how she was being watched. These were gazes full of curiosity, but also of something else, dislike. They knew who she was, and they seemed to despise her. She felt like she was in a shop window, put on public display. Her cheeks flushed with anger. Caleb, it seemed, paid no attention to these looks. He led them to the main house, dismounted, and, without a word, helped her down. Then, with a casual ease, he lifted the weakened robber and carried him into the house. Rosalind followed him, her heart pounding wildly. Inside, the house turned out to be much more spacious and warm than she could have imagined. A large fireplace in the living room, faced with wild stone, radiated a pleasant warmth, and on the walls hung animal hides and several antique rifles. Caleb laid Robert on the couch and called over a woman who seemed to be the mistress of this place. It was an elderly, stocky woman named Agatha, with a wrinkled face and eyes full of kindness. She immediately began to examine Robert and prepare a herbal decoction. You saved him, Agatha said, her voice soft and calm. His wounds were deep, Caleb replied, but he'll survive. He's under our protection now. Rosalind stood to the side, feeling out of place. She was grateful that her brother was safe, but at the same time, she hated this place and the people who lived in it, especially Caleb. She couldn't forget how he had dragged her into this nightmare. She walked over to Robert, who was lying with his eyes closed, his face pale. She took his hand, and he squeezed her slightly in return. This was enough for her to feel a sense of relief. Days turned into weeks. Rosalind, having no choice, began to adapt to this new world. She was not allowed to leave the ranch, on the grounds that it was too dangerous. She worked around the house, helped Agatha, and took care of her brother. She learned to bake bread and milk cows, and each new chore gave her a strange sense of satisfaction. She was alive, and her brother was too. And that was what mattered most. But her hatred for Caleb grew. He was harsh and silent, and she saw how he worked, how he gave orders, how his gaze, like a blade, cut through the air. He was the owner of this ranch, but it seemed he also owned her life. However, the intrigue surrounding Caleb gave her no peace. She began to observe him, trying to understand him. She saw how he would leave for the distant parts of the ranch every day, returning late at night. She noticed that he was constantly surveying the area, as if expecting an attack. In his eyes there was always a wariness, like that of a cornered beast. One night she saw him sitting by the fireplace, holding an old, worn leather wallet. Inside it, he was looking at an old, faded photograph. On it was a young woman with kind eyes. Her gaze was full of sorrow, and Rosalind felt a pang of compassion. She began to understand that behind his rough exterior, something else was hidden. That he wasn't just an unscrupulous bandit, but she couldn't figure out who he was, and it was driving her crazy. Her hatred and curiosity mixed into a single knot, and she didn't know what to do with it. She wanted to learn more, but she was afraid that if she got closer to him, he would break her. One day, when Caleb returned from another patrol, he came into the house and saw that Rosalind was sitting by the fireplace, her head bowed, holding a book in her hands. He silently walked over to her, and she flinched, hearing his steps. "You read a lot," he said. His voice was low and rough, but there was no mockery in it. "It's my brother's book," she replied. "It helps me to forget." He nodded. "In this world, there is no place for books. There is only a fight, and you must learn to fight." She looked up at him, wide. "For your life, and for your brother's life. Sooner or later, they will come for you. They haven't forgotten about you. They're just waiting." These words made her heart clench with fear. She knew he was right. She knew her nightmare was not over yet. "Who are they?" she asked. "Those who sent your brother to the judge. They wanted you to become Pendleton's wife, for you to be their pawn. They wanted him to be their leader, but he refused. And now they want you." Rosalind felt her world turn upside down. She thought she had escaped danger, but in reality, she had found herself in the center of something far more terrifying. She was not just a mail-order bride for the judge, but part of a larger conspiracy. And Caleb, this man she hated, was the only one who could protect her. The next morning, when the sun was just beginning to color the sky in pastel shades, Rosalind woke up to the sound of footsteps. Caleb was standing in the doorway, his face dark and thoughtful. He held out a worn leather bag to her. "There's money and a train ticket in there. Your brother is almost recovered. Agatha will take care of him. You can leave. I'll tell people that you ran away. It will be safer for you that way." "Leave?" Rosalind was taken aback. "But you said they would come for me. They won't look for you in the town where you were the judge's fiancé. Now that you're with me, it will be difficult for them to find you. Go to Chicago, you'll be safe there, and never come back. Not to the ranch, not to Blackwood Falls." His words astounded her. Did he really want to let her go? Was he not holding her captive? She was prepared for anything but this. She had expected a struggle, a quarrel, but not this silent, almost indifferent gesture. For a moment, she felt hollow. Everything she had planned, her vengeance, her fight, her attempts to understand him, all of it turned out to be meaningless. She looked at him, and in her eyes there was not hatred, but confusion. "Why are you doing this? Why are you letting me go?" "Because I promised your brother I'd save you, and I have." He looked away, his voice becoming a little softer. "A long time ago, I also saved a woman. I thought I could protect her, but I was wrong, and I lost her." He took an old photograph out of his pocket, the one Rosalind had seen before. On it was a young woman with kind eyes. "She was my fiancée. She was my father's wife, and I was his right-hand man. He was the leader of the Black Crowes gang. He held her captive, and when he died, I saved her. But she couldn't live with me. She ran away. and those who wanted revenge on me found her. I lost her because of my pride." His voice wavered, and Rosalind saw a pain in his eyes as deep as her own. She understood that his cruelty was just a mask, a shield, behind which he hid from pain and guilt. He didn't want the same fate to befall her. He didn't want her to become a victim of his past. In that moment, all the hatred she felt for him vanished. She saw in him not a monster, but a man broken by grief and loneliness. She felt for him not just compassion, but something much more. She realized that he hadn't lied to her, that he truly was trying to save her, even if his methods were cruel. Rosalind took a step forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. "I am not her. I won't run away." Caleb looked at her, and in his eyes was shock, and then something he couldn't hide relief. "You must leave. It's dangerous. They won't stop." "I know, but I won't leave my brother. And I won't leave you. I don't want you to live with this burden on your soul. I don't want you to be alone. And I don't want them to win." She looked at him, and in her eyes there was neither fear nor hatred, only resolve and compassion. And in that moment, in that dusty room, in the heart of the Wild West, something new sparked between them, something fragile and tender. It was not just love, it was faith. Faith that even in the darkest circumstances, one can find light. Caleb took her hand. His fingers were rough, but his touch was gentle. "All right, but be ready. They will come, and it will be a battle you have never seen before." "I'm ready," Rosalind replied, and she truly was ready. Now that she knew the truth, she was prepared to fight, not out of hatred, but out of love. In the modern world, just as in the 19th century Wild West, we often find ourselves in situations where we have to make a choice that seems to be the only right one, but in reality, can lead to great consequences. We choose a job that brings us money, but takes time away from our family. We choose a partner who, it seems to us, will solve our problems, but ultimately makes us unhappy. The story of Rosalind and Caleb teaches us that not everyone who seems like an enemy is one. Not everyone who seems like a friend deserves our trust. Appearances can be deceiving, and people's motives are often hidden. The main lesson is that sometimes, to find your true place and achieve happiness, you need to abandon easy solutions and choose the path of struggle. But you must fight not against others, but for yourself, for your values, and for those you love. Because it is in this struggle that we find not only strength, but also ourselves. And, of course, we find true love and faith, which give us the strength to live, no matter what.